The debaters, we have Sir Francis Evangelista, the moderator of Debate Society, and
Okay, so thank you, Ella. So good morning to everyone, and thank you for taking time to come and watch and support our debaters, and support also the very tradition no, that we, as you can see in the slides, no, this is our seventh annual debate tournament. We have started this since 2008, and every year we make it a point to hold it and to invite all the departments to join. Okay? And so today we have the top two teams who have reached the final round. Okay? And so they will be debating on the motion, no? Which I will show later. Okay, so just to introduce first the yellow team, okay, so who will represent the government side, okay, from the Prime Minister. Please stand when I call you. Micaela Andy Legwitz. And to act as the Deputy Prime Minister of the government, we have Angeline Rioso. And the government whip is Patricia Lois Rivera. So going to the other side, the purple team. Okay. So we have, they will represent the opposition in this debate. So the leader of the opposition will be Samantha Williams. The deputy leader of the opposition is Regine Torrecampo. And the opposition whip is Jillian Fernandez. Okay, so the panel of adjudicators will be composed of three judges. I will introduce them after the match, okay, before they give their oral adjudication later. Okay, so the motion of the championship round, which the debaters have only known an hour ago, or actually 45 minutes ago. Now that's what the parliamentary format is all about. The motion is given to the debaters 45 minutes before the round. Okay, so the motion is the motion of So this house believes that the young generation's preoccupation with social networking sites does more harm than good to their way of life. So may I now turn the microphone to the chair of the adjudication panel to begin the match.
okay, I'm wearing yellow, pero I'm neutral. Okay, this round. First of all, I would like to congratulate both teams for making it to this round. Sobrang congratulations. I was once in your shoes, so I really feel for you guys. So let's start. Reading on the motion, this house believes that the young generation's preoccupation with social networking sites does more harm than good to their way of life. Let's call now the Prime Minister to open this debate. Here.
Good morning, Madam Chair, dear adjudicators, worthy opponents, and everyone else here in the House. Today's debate is going to be that this House believes that the young generation's preoccupation with social networking sites does more harm than good to their way of life. And serve the spirit of the motion if the social networking sites are detriments to the way of life of the younger generation. And so I would like to define young generation as the time of life when one is young, oftentimes between childhood and adulthood. Preoccupation as spending one's time in a manner they see fit. Social networking sites or websites promoting cyberspace interactions, and way of life as how a specific age range is expected to live their lives. In status quo, based on the 2013 Young Adult Fertility Study of UP Population Institute, as of 2013, there are about 19.2 million youths in the Philippines. Majority of these people, of these children, nowadays are very much exposed to social media, most specifically to social networking sites. You would see most of the young generations exposed and have accounts to various social websites like Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, and the like. So the government would like to set the limitations here in the Philippines, targeting on the middle and late childhood, which will fall under the age starting from ages 6 to 16 years old. So the problems that may arrive in this debate are if the government might neglect the good social networking sites, the good that this social networking sites bring, and if the government will fail to provide the the if the burden later I'm not finished speaking it. Thank you. If the burden of the government to prove that the social networking sites bring more harm than good, thus making our model that we would like to weigh that the social networking sites are more harmful to the young generations. Therefore, we are not banning or trying to ban them, but only pointing out that the limitation of the social networking sites would be better for the young generation. And thus now, I will now proceed to my two constructives, which are the...
Point, ma'am.
Yes.
I think you're framing middle age to whatsoever you're saying, 6 to 16 years old, is quite biased. How would you expect a 6-year-old to have a social networking account? So I think that is not part of the premise anymore. Thank you.
I acknowledge what you're trying to say. But if I will try to point out an example that I have a 6-year-old cousin, and I teach 6-year-old kids, and they are my friends in Facebook, and we chat every night. And now I've received to my two constructives, which are the ecology of human development and the security of these children with social networking sites. First, when it comes to the ecology of human development, according to Yuri Bronfenbrenner, a child educator, which is an advocate for the ecological interaction of children, in his level of the ecosystem, which points out that in this level, the environment of the child, where the child is living in, whether outside the self and the family relationships and the friend relationships, affects the growth and the way of thinking and way of life of the child. What comprises this ecosystem? This includes social media, the media itself, any kind of medias, and the outside factors happening in the nation. So it includes social media. Social media is accessible by everyone nowadays. Anything being posted in the social networking websites are not at all monitored to be age appropriate on whether who the audience are. And so it is not sensitive to the age group that who the audience they are trying to target. And so they don't have this monitoring body which sees and filters all the kind of information, all the kind of information that they are trying to post in their sites to be age appropriate. So the social networking sites affects the children on how they access information, and it becomes and in a harmful manner, in a sense that the information, yes, what I've said a while ago, is not filtered. For example, a child may just be chatting with his or her friends, or maybe just playing Farmville or playing any kinds of games. But then again, the advertisements and the kinds of suggestion box of the friends, of the fan pages that they could like, are not limited, are not monitored. Therefore, sometimes when you are playing, you can see suggestion pages like in the right side corner, maybe a like page of Megan Fox, of Marian Rivera, maybe in a very, very sexy picture, thus making the children, knowing that they are children, are they making them very curious, and thus making them be curious and maybe explore on these kinds of sites. And so what I'm trying to say is that in the ecological development of the child, the environment is greatly affects the way the child thinks, the way the child lives, and thus since this social networking sites don't have the monitoring policy of being age appropriate, making it harmful for the kids. My next constructive is about the security of these children. Since the information is not filtered, there is a question of security of the information of the child, information of everything that is posted in that website, making it not age appropriate for the child. There could be their pictures, and the pictures they have seen and they can put in that website is also being questioned. People now can use screen captures even if they cannot save it on in their computers, and use these pictures into human trafficking or child pornography because since it is accessible for the kids to accessible for the kids. Also, there is a question of security of the child's identity and who the child meets in cyberspace. One can pretend that they are relatives of these kids, and yet the children will not know because they are children. And so with that, I strongly believe that social networking sites bring more harm than good. Thank you.
Thank you, DM. May we remind everyone to maintain the order in the house. Thank you. Sorry, leader of opposition.
Here. Okay, go.
Good afternoon, good morning, Madam Chair, adjudicators, members of the House, the government, and the opposition. I would first like to rebut what the government has stated. I feel that in their framework that they place for this debate, not only is it very limited for the debate, but they place it within the age range of 6 to 16 years old, which is this is the age range wherein it's not appropriate for debate because these are the people that cannot think for themselves yet. This is the age range wherein for them to be able to first create their Facebook page, they would need to have older supervision for them to actually go through the process of creating. Do you really expect a 6-year-old to be able to answer all of their personal information for them to be able to create their Facebook page? That there is also the thought that when you have someone that is 6 to 16 years old, or even between the ages where they're still young, there is still the thought of wherein they need parental guidance within things like such as social networking sites. Therefore, in their framework for this debate, I believe that it's very limited and one that should not be applied. With that being said, I would like to then go on to the clash of the opposition, which is this House believes that the young generation's preoccupation with social networking sites does more harm than good to their way of life. Now, before I begin with my arguments, I would first like to state the arguments of the opposition, which is first, the essential role of social networking sites. Second, how social networking sites bring more good than harm to the way of life for the youth. Third, social network is an avenue for communication and for information. And fourth, social networking empowers the youth. I will first discuss this first two, and the next speaker will be discussing the last two. So with my first argument, the essential role of social networking sites. Social networking sites are more than just Facebook and more than just Twitter and stuff and other sites such as that. Social networking sites are aimed at providing an avenue for socialization.
We have to go back to why social network sites were created and developed in the first place. This is why there is the word social in social networking sites. As humans, we are social in nature. We want to have relationships with other people. And with this, social networking sites is a new way of mass communications where it allows us to have more communication with other people that are out there. This is similar to the sending of letters between pen pals, which happened in the 90s, which brought more good than harm because it was a way for people to communicate with other people that are out there. So because of this, I would like to give some other examples as to why social network sites contribute to the positive human socialization process of the person. Let's think of an introvert. Most of the time, in personal relationships, they may find it hard for them to communicate with those that are around them. So the social networking sites is an avenue for them to be able to express themselves through letter writing, through blogging, through other.
Yes, you're here.
Other than that, think about people that live across nations. Let's say I had a childhood friend that then moved to another country, and I wasn't able to really communicate with them through letter writing, which takes time. I can communicate with them through social network sites, which can send you a message within seconds, and they can already reply to me immediately. I would then like to go on to my next argument. Sit down.
Yes.
So my second argument, how social networking sites bring more good than harm to the way of life. So when we talk about the way of life, this is more than just your socialization with other people. This is also your interaction with people, your behavior towards things, and your way of thinking. Because the way one thinks essentially affects the way that one acts and perceives life. So why does social networking sites do more good than harm? This is because social networking sites broaden your horizon. They broaden your perspectives to reality, to the society, and to the government. An example of this is during the time where Yolanda hit Tacloban and the other areas of the Philippines.
Yes.
Many individuals from the youth were able to volunteer to help those that were affected through social networks. From reading about the typhoon, from seeing the images and feeling what they felt when they saw these images, it was a way for them, these posts that were placed on the social networking sites to use this information to gather their efforts to aid those that were in need and to volunteer. Please sit down. So this act of thinking and feeling and what they were able to get from social networking sites affected the way that they behaved and perceived such situations, and thus affected their way of life by promoting the act of volunteerism. So this volunteerism came about through the social networking sites because of this, the advantages of social networking sites broadens the horizons and the perspectives of the youth, and then allows them to improve their way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, LO. This one the PM for the development.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of this House. We all know how important it is to develop language and social skills, especially for the cases of children. So what I'm going to do in my speech is I'm going to prove to you that social networking sites does more harm than good to their way of life. But before that, I would like to rebut what the leader of the opposition have said. So I would like to remind you that we are considered the youth who are most inclined to technology. Don't get shocked if there are 6-year-olds who use social networking sites. And you said that they need parental guidance, but the thing is, they still have access to social networking sites. Whether they access it themselves or they have parental guidance, they still have access to the social networking sites. And you said that it serves as the avenue for socialization because it allows us to communicate. Just like for the cases of the introverts who use the social networking sites to communicate. But I would like to ask, are you saying that we should just let them be socially awkward? Should we not actually take action so that they will, should we not help them to develop social skills. And another, she said that it broadened perspectives. Just for the cases of Yolanda, um, we can actually get information about that through television. So we don't really use social networking sites just so we can get news. Because you said social networking sites are created for socialization. So now let me move to my arguments. So I'm going to prove that social networking sites do more harm than good. First, because it hinders personal social interaction, and second, it is detrimental for the youth's health. For my first argument, I would like to explain how it hinders personal interaction, especially for the language and emotional development of these children. So if these children spend a lot of their time in social networking sites, there is a tendency that they will neglect the true form of socialization, which is personal social interaction. So according to the famous educator John Dewey, experience best teaches children. So it is important for them to have a direct interaction to assure that they will develop the language properly. Let's say these children will use social networking sites. We cannot really guarantee that they will develop the muscles that they use for language. They will not use the proper facial expressions, intonations, stresses. That is important so that they will not cause miscommunication. So there are things that cannot really be learned in social networking sites. These include identifying facial expressions and social cues. If these children will converse with their peers through social networking sites only, that means most of the time they cannot see the facial expressions, they cannot see the gestures. They will just chat, they will use the keyboard, they will just read. So it's important for them to practice this deciphering facial expressions and identifying social cues. And because if not, these children will be emotionally incompetent. That means they cannot read others' emotions. Which will actually lead to problems in communicating and probable cause of miscommunication, which is being being avoided by the children. So if these children will get used to using social networking sites to communicate, they will not develop the important social skills, which include the proper intonations, stresses, expressions. So what? Excessive use of social networking sites is detrimental to the development of the children's social skills and may therefore lead them to become emotionally incompetent, and they will not be able to develop the proper skills to socialize. Second is it is detrimental for the youth's health. Social networking sites require you to have a device to access it. Tablet, cell phone, and in most cases, desktop. It requires you to sit, maybe for a long time, which may cause them to have health complications. This includes we used to make a thesis about the using of tablets in high school, Miriam High School, and their problems with it actually revolves in their posture. They're having a headache, and their eyes are aching when they are using these devices for a long time. And the worst case of this is actually obesity. It may be a hindrance for exercising. Let's say they will use social networking sites for communicating. They will no longer have the time to exercise or to move, and there will be a problem with the proper circulation of the blood. So if these are all affected, the eyes, the posture, headache, if these are affected, it alone proves that it is detrimental for their way of life. And a child who will be too preoccupied with social networking sites will develop health problems and poor health condition. So we see here that using social networking sites to socialize is actually, it's ironic because they will not they will not learn the proper ways to communicate and the social skills that they need. And we can see here that yes, it does more harm than good to the way of life of this youth. That's all. Thank you.
Go at the Reg. Woo!
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of this House, dear government, and the opposition. I have points to rebut on whatever the government have said. Earlier, our leader of opposition already mentioned that we think that the government set it up in such a way that debate is not anymore feasible, and that we are only debating on the development of the child and not the good or harm given by the preoccupation with social networking sites.
Woo,
They
you're
gave
here!
an age group. They gave an age group wherein saying that the debate will only cover those in the middle late ages. I really don't know, but it's between 6 to 16. And we say that this is very limiting. We pointed out earlier that a 6-year-old do we really think that a 6-year-old is capable of making her or his own social networking account? And they said that yes, it is possible. But we say that if it is possible, then it's also possible that there is someone or an adult guiding or supervising this child. And we can see in the argument of the government that they are putting the burden not on the person using the social networking site, but on the parents. Why? Between 6 and 16
Yes.
are this age are under parental consent. Meaning, whatever they do is guided by their parents. And thus, if they are using excessive excessive user of the social networking sites, then I think the burden is not on the child, but it's on how the parents really cater, how the parents
Here,
care
here!
for their children. Third is that they were not able, or even if they gave a certain age group, 6 to 16, they were not able to establish that this age group is already preoccupied by social networking sites. They failed to mention, even if they gave, ample facts about 19 million are already in social networking sites, but they failed to establish that a 6-year-old will go home, use the internet for like 10 hours or 8 hours. They failed to establish that. Unlike going to a certain age group, a paradigm of high schoolers or college students, we can see here that even if we don't establish it, it's already evident, it's already a fact, it's already a status quo that,
Bye, ma'am.
thank you, sit down, that this age group is already preoccupied. And usually these are high school and college students. We also see here that social networking does more harm, as they said, to the environment of the children. I think in that paradigm, social networking is not the cause per se, but how the parents of these children respond to moderating the use, given that if it really happens, that these children use social networking sites. And even if they have access to the things that they were saying about information, I think it's also, given their paradigm, that the parents have the responsibility to filter the access to certain internet sites. Meaning it's not on the social networking site itself, it's not on the child who is using the social networking, given their paradigm, but it's how the mediator, the parents, respond to such relationship of the child and the social networking sites, given their paradigm.
Here,
They
here!
also said that it is a hindrance to personal interaction, that it is a neglect or an indirect interaction. No, because social networking sites is only one avenue to personal interaction. They said that social networking sites will not give us an assurance, but the opposition says that it may and it is one avenue, as already said by our leader of opposition. It is one avenue for human socialization. And even if this is the case, social networking itself, as I told you a while ago, is not what makes it detrimental, but how they use it and how the parents, given their paradigm, respond to such relationship. They also gave a situation of the health effects. I think that's not mutually exclusive. Why? Because when you go to schools and you will have a certain posture, what they were saying a while ago, you have a certain posture in school, the environment is polluted, then the child is also, and talking to, a person who is sick or whatsoever, there is also a health effect to that kind of paradigm. So we can see here that the health effect is not only on the opposite opposition side, but there are also certain health effects on the government side. So that
Yeah! Woo!
and I think I already rebutted the four arguments they gave. Argument number one for the opposition, which is very constructive. Social networking is an avenue for communication and information. How? Communication, as we all know, is an avenue to enrich and circulate information. Thus, social networking is a way of communication, as we all know. Communication even beyond our own space and in real time. Social networking allows different groups of individuals to communicate and share their experiences. They are exposed to the different realities happening in different parts of the world. And so what? Thus, through social networking, information is accessible and real. Why? Because they share experiences in Facebook and in Twitter, so they're informed of real events. Their awareness of social, political, and cultural realities are broadened. Example, the awareness on the corruption of the government. Who would know that the government is already corrupting 10 million pesos from our own money if not for the social networking site or not for the information given out to the youth through the social networking site?
Yes.
Now, argument number 3, social networking empowers the youth. What do we mean by empowerment? If you don't know, it is to give power to certain individuals and groups. And how can we empower certain individuals and groups? This is by giving them official or legal power, or simply by protecting and promoting their human rights. Their exercise of rights is a form of empowerment. And we all know that the right to freedom of expression is a right that the government should fulfill. Social networking site is thus an avenue to freely express oneself. It upholds or promotes freedom of expression. It allows the youth to express their desires, opinions, ideas, and suggestions online. If they are given the chance to participate in public discussions online, like in Facebook, they feel that a certain level of confidence and they feel the level of importance. Thus, they feel empowered and that they really are part of society. An example would be writing a blog about anything happening in your life. This is to freely express what happened to you this day. And others may also be informed of this. And this is a way of giving suggestions, even if you don't have the right or you don't have the power to legally prosecute others for their wrongdoings, but you are able to express this through the social networking sites. And I believe for that matter, the opposition strongly has a constructive case. Thank you.
Here. Woo.
Thank you, TLO. May we remind the audience to please tone down our voices. I know everyone's excited. Okay, let's now call on the government whip to summarize the government's case. Here.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members, other adjudicators, members of this House, our worthy opponents on the opposition, and my worthy government debaters. So, I would just like to reiterate the motion for this debate. This House believes that the young generation's preoccupation with social networking sites does more harm than good on their way of life. Thus, we are not, as my PM or Prime Minister have said, we are not trying to ban these social networking sites. We're just trying to point out why social networking sites and the preoccupation of the young generation brings more harm than good to them. So for my speech, for my whip speech, I would like to put it into two important points. First, the detriments that the social networking sites bring to the young generation, and as well as how it affects the total development of the young generation or the youth, as how we have said our framework. First off, I would like to say the health detriments of what social networking sites bring to the young generation. We have said that as my Deputy Prime Minister have said, this brings detriments on posture, on the eyes, on obesity and such. And the opposition have said that even education or going to school creates hindrance to this posture or detriments to this posture. We did not say that education does not bring posture because, of course, it is on the child on how she sits or how he or she sits in school. But through social networking sites, we try to add to this detriments that already have the young generation, oh my god, the young generation already experience in school. Next, I would like to point out that the opposition have failed to address or rebut our issue on security, on the detriments of the social networking sites bring to the security, because even though no matter how much you try to private your account in Facebook and Twitter and such, there is still that access of screen captures. Therefore, even though these other people, maybe predators and such and strangers, cannot click on your picture or profile picture, they can still screen capture these pictures. Also, we have said that the people would have access to them or would be able to communicate with them, and thus they don't have that assurance that they really know these people, because other people could pose as people that these young generation or these children know. Another is that they are saying that in line with that, the social networking sites empowers the youth. Yet, through empowering them, you have said that they are able to exercise their rights and such, but there is an extent to our rights as well, and this may lead to bullying of other people. And you said that they empower, they are able to express what they feel in society, yet they are trying to hide behind these accounts. There are a lot of poster accounts that try to bash our government, and what? They just hide behind logos and not really their faces, and they don't speak out to our society and our government. And you say that there is still also a detriment in the freedom of expression. Yet we are not saying that we are not banning the social networking sites. We are just trying to point out that the limitation of the use of social networking sites would bring more good to the children, because they are able to spend their leisure time or their free time in other activities and not just sit in a computer until the time they have to sleep. Another is the hindrance to the total development of the child. As my DPM has said, the internet is not sensitive to the needs of their users. They are not able to filter each and every user. They are not able to filter each and every advertisement, each and every suggested pages on each and every account. Therefore, these children are exposed to content, are exposed to cyber content and cyber information that are not made for them, because these children, they are still developing. Yes, you say that all these children have guidance or need guidance of parents, but you fail to see that there are different kinds of parents. There are parents who neglect their children. So how will you address guidance of parents to their children if these parents neglect their children? Another to the total development of the child is that these social networking sites are not able to promote what socialization really means, because socialization is being able to talk to a person face to face and able to determine his social cues on his or her social cues, and to be able to express yourself in the way that you see fit, to use proper intonation and proper stresses to be able to express what you feel. In social networking sites, when you type what you're trying to say, the person who is trying to get the message could not determine on how you are trying to say. If you're trying to say it in a friendly manner, or you're trying to say it in a very powerful and empowering manner. Thus, this is not developed when you try to talk to people or communicate to people to social networking sites. We are not saying that communication to further nations or to people that are far away from you is not beneficial. We acknowledge that, but we should not just limit it in social networking sites. And before I end my whip speech, I would just like first also to reiterate that the opposition was unable to express their clash in the proper way. And with that, I believe that our side of the house, the government, was able to present constructive arguments and reasons as to why the young generation being preoccupied in social networking sites brings more harm than good to them. Thank you.
Thank you, government. To summarize the case of the opposition.
You're here. Gabe, go to jail.
Good morning, Madam Chair, my dear adjudicators, members of the House, our dear government, and my beloved opposition. Good morning. Okay, so through the course of this debate, it could be observed that there's one question to answer. Which paradigm
it brings more good than harm to the young generation. But however, before I proceed in that side of my speech, I'll first rebut and reiterating what our opposition speakers have already said about the supposed arguments of the government. So first, the problem here is that their definition of the youth as in 6 to 16. So given that it has been argued that the capacity of the youth to actually make social networking sites, of course, the opposition does not say that this youth, age range could not make social networking sites. Later, sorry. Given that first, 6 to 16, it should be known that in general that there should be parental supervision in making of these social networking sites. However, if this does not happen, and this means that there should be filtration of this supposed or alleged post in Facebook and Instagram. However, given their points of health detriments, development detriments, and even security, it could be said that if given that this detriments saying that the filtration of excessive use, if I may say excessive use, wherein the House does not say that there is excessive preoccupation of devotion, this means that almost all their arguments argue that because of this paradigm of having excessive use, if I may reiterate again, excessive use and preoccupation, in which their definition haven't stated, wherein their definition of preoccupation only said that this youth will spend time on social networking sites and did not say excessive time, in which could not be detrimental to any health and security measures, given that they only spend an amount of time in this social networking sites. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Now going back to the different of the to my arguments of what the opposition said about this case. Maybe the government wasn't listening, but our leader of opposition had already said their clash. Given that we believe that social networking sites brings more good than harm, and these arguments are divided into 4 parts. First is that after social networking sites should be seen first at their first main goal, which is its essential role and characteristics, in which it is given that we are social in nature, there is an element of socialization which is part of human processes. Now, given that there is an evolution in which we are living now in a fast-paced world, we cannot rely only on snail mails, which could arrive about 3 months or 2 months or so. We cannot rely only information on TV and other sites, but right now we are saying that social networking sites is a new avenue of communication and information, in which could influence the way of life of the youth. Given this, it actually influences the way of life, which the opposition believes that it gives more good than harm. Why? Because in social networking sites, there are interactions, socializations, in which perspectives could be broadened, in which thinkings and patterns of way of life influences behavior, in which this broadened perspectives could actually influence the actions of the youth. Giving the example of our leader of opposition, even the young generation could help in the Yolanda victims because of their exposure in the social networking sites, in which it was the avenue for Yolanda victims and volunteerism. Third, stating again the avenue of communication and information, because of this new way, of this evolutionary way of social networking sites also influencing the youth, there is awareness to societal issues which could not be made in other forms of communication, in other forms of networking, in which social networking sites could provide. And lastly, is youth empowerment. Because of through communication from social networking sites, which the young generation could now have and is experiencing now, because of this communication and awareness, there is youth empowerment. Also, I may state what the opposition said about saying that introverts are socially awkward. No, because introverts just it is their choice to actually be introverts and not because they're socially awkward. It may just say that they are more able or they prefer to use these kinds of mediums and sites in order to communicate, to express themselves, and also have socialization. Um, I'm so sorry. And given this paradigm of the opposition against the paradigm of the government, it could be seen that the motion was not used effectively by the government, given that the House believes that the young generation's preoccupation with social networking sites does more harm than good. Given that their detriments of what they're saying only applies to excessive use, which they have not defined effectively, means that the opposition wins this case that young generation's preoccupation, meaning spending time on social networking sites, gives elements of socialization, communication, information, youth empowerment, and awareness. And with this and all that I've been said, we believe that our paradigm is better and more precise and effectively given by the opposition. And with that, thank you.
Hear, hear!
Thank you, opposition whip. To evaluate the round, let's call now the opposition reply here.
Woo!
Alright, as we end this debate, the opposition would like to thank the government for that very biased setup, that it was very challenging. Anyway, the government had this notion that we are debating on how the preoccupation of children, for that matter, affects or brings harm on their way of life. But the government, all throughout the debate, was trying to argue how social networking site is detrimental to the development of the child. We think that development of the child is not simply or is not equatable to the way of life. And they already they fail to acknowledge this, and that is why they fail to argue on the points given by the opposition regarding the contribution to human socialization and it improves the way of life. And we would like to say that the way of life is more than child development, but it's also more on the perception and thinking and how these children behave and whatsoever. And I think their arguments are also not mutually exclusive given the health effects. They already acknowledge that. And also security. I think when it comes to bullying, it's not only evident in social networking sites, but bullying also
Yes.
is happening in
Here.
school and in a school setting. So we can see here that their rebuttal to our argument is not also mutually exclusive. So we can see here that security can be achieved in our paradigm and also can be achieved in their paradigm. So we think that argument won't stand all throughout the debate. Now, why do we think that the government will win this debate? It's because of the 4 points we've given. The opposition. The opposition, my dear opposition, I'm sorry.